News, I'm Steve Pugh. Planned Parenthood is hoping a judge will prevent the state of Missouri from shuttering the state's lone abortion clinic this week. More from Evan Brown.
Missouri officials say the one clinic in the state which performs abortions is in violation of safety laws and it may not renew the facility's license. Planned Parenthood, which operates the clinic, is taking the state to court in order to get a judge to intervene. But Missouri's health department points to the facility's records, saying a number of failed attempts at pregnancy termination compromises patient safety. If the license isn't renewed by tomorrow, Missouri will be the first state with no abortion clinic since the 1973 Roe v. Wade decision. Evan Brown, Fox News.
One of the longest-serving U.S. senators has died a year after his resignation. Jared Halpern has more.
Mississippi Republican Thad Cochran died early this morning in Oxford, Mississippi. He was 81 years old. Cochran resigned from the Senate last year after a 45-year career in Congress. He was chairman of the powerful Senate Appropriations Committee. When elected to the Senate in 1978, Cochran became the first Republican since Reconstruction to win statewide in Mississippi. And during his time in office, had a reputation for bipartisan compromise while steering billions of dollars to his home state. On Capitol Hill, Jared Halpern, Fox News.
There's a health scare at the Los Angeles Police Department. Tom Graham explains.
The Los Angeles Police Department is confirming an employee has contracted the bacteria that causes typhoid fever. It's a potentially life-threatening illness. In a statement, the LAPD says its police officers often patrol in adverse environments and can be exposed to various dangerous elements. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention reports less than 350 Americans contract typhoid fever each year, and usually only after traveling to developing countries. The LAPD has not named the sick employee. Tom Graham, Fox News.
Churches today have a lot of different titles for their pastors, from executive pastor to pastors of spiritual formation to ministers of worship and performing arts. But Steve Jordahl reports a church in Atlanta has crossed a bright theological line by hiring a minister who's a psychic and medium.
LaCara Foster holds a degree from the Interdenominational Theological Center and has been brought on staff at Vision Church in Atlanta.
My name is LaCara Foster, and I possess an extraordinary gift. Some people may refer to it as a psychic or a medium.
Her specialty is talking to the dead. When asked in an interview why I work at a church, she said God told her, quote, "I promised my people eternal life. How will my people know I've kept my promise if you don't demonstrate your gift?" Christian apologist Dr. Alex McFarland has no doubt Foster heard voices, that they were not from God.
No spirit with which she communicates is really of God. She's communicating with demons and doesn't know it.
I asked McFarland what the first thing was he would say from the pulpit if asked to preach to Vision Church this Sunday.
I think I would probably choose for my text 2 Corinthians 11:14 that warns Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. And then I would probably have them turn to Revelation 21:8 that talks about those that have been deceived and do not inherit the kingdom of heaven, which includes, quote, sorcerers.
He says he understands when lost people do lost things, but if you claim the name of Christ, you'd better not stray from the Word of God.
We're on extremely dangerous, perilous, tenuous ground when we go outside of the pages of God's Word in search of truth.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
And finally, more autonomous vehicles are heading to some Arizona roads.
Waymo, Google's self-driving division, says its tractor-trailers are being tested on Phoenix area freeways this week and will eventually expand to more routes. The tests will start with 2 drivers in each rig. Waymo isn't the first to try autonomous trucks in Arizona, so have Uber and Too Simple. Waymo is already testing self-driving cars and runs a taxi service in eastern Phoenix and its suburbs. The big rigs use the same sensors as passenger cars, but are configured differently. Ginny Cosola, Fox News.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
J. Warner Wallace.
I think we're blessed as Christians that we don't believe something that's not rooted in history. We believe something that had to actually occur. As Paul said, if the resurrection didn't actually occur in history, we're to be pitied. And that's the beautiful thing about Christianity, is it's something you can actually investigate. I'm grateful for that, because as an investigator, that's exactly how I came to faith.
The Marriage, Family, and Life Conference is coming June 20th through 22nd. Learn more and register at urbanfamilytalk.com. sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
No, Russia did not help me get elected. You know who got me elected? You know who got me elected? I got me elected. Russia didn't help me at all. This was all about Russia, Russia, Russia. They don't talk about Russia anymore because it turned out to be a hoax. It was all a hoax. And then they say, gee, he fought back. Isn't that terrible? He fought back. Of course I fight back because it was a false accusation, a totally false accusation. And it's a disgrace. And it's a very sad period for this country. And I think in the end, I will consider what's happening now to be one of my greatest achievements, exposing this corruption.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Hey there, welcome. Thank you so much for being with us today. Guess what? Another jam-packed program. We're going to be chatting with you about everything having to do with toxic masculinity. Yeah, get a little bit of that up in you. Also, we have Newt Gingrich's comments on James Comey, being actually quite frightened of AG Barr. And we're going to chat with Paula Bolyard. She's the managing editor for PJ Media. We're going to chat with her about Georgia and Disney and Netflix and this it's like a big deal the way this is brewing up. It's what we're seeing is basically fascism. It's where I don't like your opinion, so I'm not gonna put jobs in your state. It's like they're trying to be bullies. They think much more of themselves than the rest of us do. And I'm wondering just how many abortions do women who work in Hollywood actually have, that they would be in a state for a month or 6 weeks or 90 days shooting, and they would need to have an abortion so badly in Georgia that they would not want to go work there because they can't get one? Are you kidding me? Okay, we'll dig into that with Paula. The call lines are open, 866-963-2037. Thank you for making your home here at American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk. We're so blessed to have you with us. So first off, I did tease this story yesterday, and we didn't get to it because we just had the best of the best callers, just tons of callers, and it was so fun. And I talked to you a little bit about this, and I want to connect this up to what we're seeing, because these are opportunities to be courageous and let God show up and show out in our everyday lives. So this couple live in a senior living community in the state of Virginia, and they're being represented now by First Liberty Institute and attorneys from Hunt & Andrews Kurth, LLP. They have filed a lawsuit against the Evergreens at Smith Run and its parent company, Community Realty Company, alleging religious discrimination in housing by the management of the senior living community. And this is in Fredericksburg, Virginia. So the lawsuit was filed in the Eastern District of Virginia on behalf of Ken Haig, who is a retired Lutheran pastor, and his wife, Liv. They're residents in the senior apartment facility. So first of all, how cool is it that maybe you're living there too, like you live at the Evergreens at Smith Run, and you just happen upon, maybe at dinner one night, you're sitting at a table with Ken and Liv, and Ken lets fly that he's a retired Lutheran pastor. You would be like, oh yeah, this dude probably, like, this is a Bible study that's on fire. Like, I want to be in that one. So then they're just having Bible study. They host a small Bible study in their apartment. Now, if you already live there, that means there's no parking issue. It's just a matter of you just walking over or taking the elevator up or whatever the situation is to the Haig's apartment so that you can do this Bible study. So they've been threatened with eviction. And of course, the First Liberty attorneys have sent a letter to the apartment community back in August, and now seeing no resolution, they filed a lawsuit to vindicate the rights that the Haigs have under the Fair Housing Act, which was designed to make sure that landlords can't force their tenants to move by discriminating against them on the basis of religion or other protected classes. Now, a ruling in this case could have far-reaching impacts across the country beyond Virginia, because any court case can be looked at as persuasive, even if it doesn't bind the particular court, because it's in another state. First Liberty has a similar case that they're actually working through in moving through the courts in Florida, where a senior citizen was told that she could not hold her women's Bible study in her condo complex common area. that case was filed with HUD as an administrative complaint, and the process is ongoing. The Haigs continue to live in their apartment community, their retirement community, but this is something in which, you know how it is when something like this jumps off, everybody's talking about it. It's the subject of gossip and speculation, and it makes it look as if they're doing something wrong. Now, remember, if they were having people over for Game of Thrones watch parties once a week during the season, nobody would have had a problem with it. It's that they're sitting around talking about the goodness of God. That is what the problem is. And the enemy has to come in and try to disrupt that action, because goodness knows there are people living in that apartment community who might say, I've never been to a Bible study. I'm not a Christian, but I'm lonely and I don't have anybody to visit me here. And they've offered to let me come and sit. They don't care that I'm not a Christian, and they don't care that I don't, they're going to loan me a Bible. They're going to let me have the book. I think I might go. And so people that Satan is pretty sure he's got them going into the grave and they're going to be with him for eternity, they're just happenstance upon the Haigs Bible study, and they might come to know the Lord. And so he's got to put a monkey wrench in that. I'm calling this out for what it really is here, people. Yeah, it's whoever turned them in, whatever nincompoop said they're not allowed in their own apartment to get together with a little bit of food and fun and relaxation and fellowship, to pray for each other, to basically bind each other's wounds, because that is one of the chief problems that elderly people in this country face. It's of course, there are health issues and things like that, but the primary thing facing elderly Americans is loneliness, not being in the same city as family, and even for those that are, having family visit on a regular basis. Now, I know if you're listening to this and you have family nearby and y'all are close knit, that sounds so, it sounds like I'm basically lying on these people. But study after study after study, loneliness is highlighted. When elderly people are polled, they talk about how lonely they are. If you ever work in assisted living facilities, if you volunteer there, if you've ever taken, done one of those big meals or, Christmas dinners or anything, the people who live there talk about the loneliness. They make friends with the people who live there, but what they're longing for is that close familial relationship with people they've known for a long time. Now, you can make friends in the senior living apartment complex, facilities, whatever, but they're looking for that deep personal connection. And it just, to me, I don't know how horrible of a person you have to be to say that people meeting in someone else's apartment, not your apartment, down the hall on another floor, wherever, that you have the right to tell them they can't get together and study the Word of God. That this is, first of all, sorry, millennials, because I had kind of thought this was your thing, but apparently old people are up in this business as well. Absolutely unacceptable. Thank God for First Liberty, the lawyers there, that they're going to actually take action on this and make something happen. And so that is, I think it's going to have a happy ending, because religious freedom is protected under the Constitution in housing. So let's get to Meryl Streep. Now, Meryl Streep's straight out of Hollywood. She's a hardcore feminist, and she has never hidden her desire to have, women advance. Even sometimes it would appear at the expense of men. And she has, if I'm not mistaken, she has 2 or 3 daughters. It's either 3 daughters or 2. They're striking, tall, and I don't think they're in acting. Like they're brilliant. So here she is in this clip talking about how this term toxic masculinity has been elevated to a sense of like everyone treats this term as if it has a lot of validity, and she does not appreciate it. And I was really surprised to stumble on this morning. It's number 6.
Half of the women in America who are half of the people in law school in America are women, more than half in medical school. We're making incursions in business. We're coming up from the bottom. It's just that upper echelon we haven't broken through. And women's issues are men's problems.
Yeah. So, yeah. Sarah, if you want to say something about that.
So she closes out by saying women's issues are men's problems, and I don't agree with that. But it is interesting to hear someone from Hollywood quote the very same statistics that I've quoted here on the show, which completely debunk this myth that men are holding women down or that men are, their masculinity is toxic. In fact, I think what we've seen a rise in is toxic femininity not the feminine wiles as in the feminine attributes that make women women, but in a kind of ultra feminism that means you have to be angry and you have to fight men and you have to take them over and you have to force them and that type of thing. And I find that women who believe that, it shows on their faces. Like, it shows in their demeanor. It is a part of their everyday being. It is a part of how they operate and move in the world. And it makes a difference to the men in their lives because the men feel constantly on eggshells as if they don't have anywhere that they can kind of be safe. They don't have anywhere that they can kind of just live and be free. They have to constantly be on edge to make sure and validate anything that has to do with pro-woman, pro-feminist, pro-feminism, anything that has to do with pushing men down, calling them, toxic, which, again, the words that we use when we're describing each other and talking about how we interact with each other, they have meaning and they can set the tone for how those interactions occur. So I'm always interested in the conversation surrounding it, but I think when you see someone like Meryl Streep, who has a lot of clout, a lot of power in Hollywood, and really has been a feminist, an outspoken feminist in the past, in the more traditional sense in the beginning, and lately, she's not been as vocally against men as some of the others, but she can be. As she said at the end, women's issues are men's problems. Why can't it be that we all have issues, we have human issues, and some of them are more central to women and some are more central to men, but in cooperation, we can make changes and improve things for the betterment of all. Instead of saying we can only improve things for women, she did describe there how some of the upper echelons of business remain, almost exclusively male, but in so many other areas, women have made strides. And it really has to do with, in those upper echelons, it has to do with the commitment of the women who would be in those spaces. In other words, women who've decided that they're going to forego having a family. And like, for instance, one such woman who has had extreme success in her career field, Condoleezza Rice, but she's single. And so sometimes when you see someone have that kind of extreme success, whether it's early on or later, you can kind of look at some of the choices that they've made. If they're a woman, they make those choices. It's basically saying, I want this career aspiration as opposed to I want a family where I'm going to be the primary caregiver. There's nothing wrong with that. I think it's actually one of the things that makes America so special, that women can have those kinds of decisions. We can say, I want to be a career-oriented woman and I don't want to have a family, and that's fine. And you can make it in America. You're not the property of a man as you would be if you lived in an Islamic nation. But you can also say, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I want to meet and marry and be a stay-at-home mother and have that be my primary, that's my primary work. And you can do that too. For Meryl Streep to make this statement, it kind of means that it's validation for the rest of us who've said that this movement has gone too far, that feminism has stepped outside of simply wanting to improve scenarios for women to actually actively subverting and working against men as a group, not individual men who might be bad actors, but men as a group. It's unbiblical, and it puts a spotlight on some of the other things that we've seen so far with children, with boys in America, with the struggle for boys to kind of acclimate to the new realities of K through 12 public education, and the struggles of inner city boys who they don't have father figures. And there's toxic femininity in those environments where the woman is not only, rough and calloused, but is also operating as the mom and the dad. And many of these young men are turning to gangs and other situations where they claim that they're finding family, but in reality, they're finding destruction. And I connect all of it together because in a situation where men and women are imbalanced and not in their role that God has ordained for us, when women decide they want to have children outside of marriage, as so many women in Hollywood have done, artificial insemination, whatever, getting into the marriage space by hook or by crook. In other words, they're making a family that's a pseudo family without a father in it, and then wondering why these things are blowing up in our faces. Well, there you go. So it's nice to hear Meryl Streep tell the truth. Out of Hollywood, for no less. All right, I'm Stacy Washington. We'll be right back.
Here's American Family Association President Tim Wildman.
Lynn Ingram and Jim Duncan, two Texans, support and believe in our ministry here at AFA and AFR.
We know more about the laundry business than anything else. We know a little bit about a lot of things, but we know a lot about the laundry and dry cleaning business.
They created a laundry detergent to sell to folks to support AFA.
We just want to be able to provide a product that can be used by AFA to support the ministry.
When you wash your family's clothes with Redeem Clean laundry detergent, you can take great satisfaction in knowing that you're supporting the vital work of the American Family Association. It's a unique way to increase your giving to AFA. For clean laundry and support of a cleaner society, it's Redeem Clean. Learn more about the Redeem Clean products when you visit redeemclean.afastore.net.
Hi, I'm Crawford Loritz with a Legacy Moment. I know a 14-year-old boy whose mom is a single parent. Unfortunately, this young man has hit a lazy stretch in the road. Lately, he seems to be satisfied with doing the bare minimum. Recently, his grades dropped and his mom put her foot down. She took away a lot of his privileges and placed him under some pretty stringent accountability, ultimately for his own good. Good for her. Some of us are lazy adults because in our formative years, we were allowed to do what we felt like doing. Little did we realize that not living responsibly had damaging results in our lives. Proverbs chapter 6, verses 6 through 10 has some strong words to say about laziness. Go to the ant, O sluggard. Observe her ways and be wise, which, having no chief, officer, or ruler, prepares her food in the summer and gathers her provision in the harvest. How long will you lie down, O sluggard? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. Your poverty will come in like a vagabond, and your need like an armed man. In these verses are 3 steps to overcoming laziness. One is identify your responsibility, like the ant does. Number 2, map out how you are going to meet your obligations. This is what I'm responsible for. Now let me figure out how I need to go about this. Then number 3, remember that to a large degree, the outcome of your life is determined by your response. It's not a matter of what you want. It's a matter of what you're willing to do. Well, here's what I want you to remember today. There is a cure for laziness, and it's really not all that complicated or heavy. The cure is doing what you don't want to do.
Join Crawford Loritz tomorrow for another Legacy Moment.
You can watch a live stream of the show on Facebook or YouTube at Stacy on the Right. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you for being here. Check us out at afr.net, urbanfamilytalk.com, and stacyontheright.com. Hit the subscribe button. It's my pleasure to welcome one of my good friends, Paula Bolyard. She's the managing editor of PGA Media. Hey, Paula, thanks for joining in today.
Hi, Stacy. How are you today?
You know, I'm pretty good, but I just feel like there's some kind of like weird alternate universe that we're living in where Hollywood production companies and, you know, Netflix and Disney and places like that think they can dictate policy to American voters. It's weird.
Isn't that funny? And even more so, they're doing it because they want tax benefits for their rich Hollywood producers and actors. So they're going to states like Georgia and saying, we're not going to produce movies here unless you let us have abortions all day, every day, and or else we'll leave and go get a tax credit somewhere else.
Yeah, but will they? Are there that many tax credits laying around?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question because, you know, I don't know if you heard that Netflix said that they they decided they weren't going to pull out of Georgia because they want the tax credits, but they're going to make a donation of some undetermined amount, unannounced amount to the ACLU to help with the effort to get as many abortions as possible in Georgia. They're just hypocrites.
Well, because they believe
have the virtue signal.
Yeah, well, yeah, but Paula, they believe, because I know you saw this story. It was in like I got it 4 or 5 different times over the past almost 7 days, and that is the resurrection of this 18-year-old piece of malarkey that claims to prove that the reason we've had a massive reduction in crime is not due to gun ownership or, better socioeconomics. It's due to blacks having abortions. Black women aborting babies actually lowers the crime rate. This is what Anne Hathaway said, whatever her name is, Rajatowski, with all Hollywood women, they happen to be white, saying these things about black women. I'm surprised they haven't gotten smacked in their mouths. It's unbelievable.
Right. It's sick. It's demented, the way that they, say it's better to kill these babies than to allow them to have a life of crime someday, assuming that, every child born into poverty or every child born into unfortunate circumstances or with uncaring parents will turn into a criminal, especially if they're black, they seem to imply.
And one of the people they like to make fun of the most, Dr. Ben Carson, famed neurosurgeon, now the head of HUD, presidential candidate, an all-around super success story, grew up in poverty, born to a mom who was a single mom and couldn't read herself. And he's not the only, it's not like he's an anomaly. There are literally thousands of blacks who they're not in the public eye, and we don't ever get to hear their story, who grow up in poverty-stricken environments with a single mom, and they go on to be successful Americans, not black Americans, Americans. They just happen to be permanently tanned, but they're not criminals. So this idea that we can decide we just abort as many black babies as we can, and we're definitely not going to have as much crime, it's not even borne out by what we know statistically, but they're just lying.
Right. No, it's not a science-based thing, but, and I'm sure the left is very paternalistic. They know what's best for everyone. And, as you noted, many of them are rich white people. Right. And they know what's best for black people, and what's best for black people is to kill their babies.
And it just makes me wonder, do you think Anne Hathaway has any black girlfriends? Because I've met you before. You and I think, have even had, we've had happy hour. We've been to conferences together. We've met each other. And I can't imagine you telling me, what would be really great for black people? I can't imagine you saying that. And we've met. We actually have met each other multiple times. Now, Anne Hathaway, not only do I not think she has any real black friends, and I don't mean women she's been in a movie with. I mean, women that if they text, they can be at your house in a few minutes. A real friend. Mm-hmm. So it just occurs to me that if Anne Hathaway and I were ever in a place and we were sitting and she started opining on something like this, and if I stood up and angrily confronted her and said, how dare you put your mouth on black women like that? How dare you feign to know what we should do with our unborn babies? How dare you put yourself in the place of God Almighty and try to dictate who gets to live or die? I think she would probably be so shocked to be spoken to like that. She would, of course, the straight neck. And then she would probably start apologizing or storm off in a huff, one or the other.
Well, first, I would pay money to see that.
I'd pay money to be able to do it.
TV in my book. So I hope you get the opportunity to do that someday. But, it seems like there should be someone in her life, if she had actual black friends, would perform an intervention. Or maybe it's an exorcism. Maybe that's what she needs.
I know. Someone who's advocating for abortion that hard. You're right, Paula. This isn't. And the saddest part about it is it would be fun to get to say that to her because it would make me feel so much better. But the problem is the response from her would be, oh, well, you're a right winger, or, oh, you're not really black. I don't know how many times I've been told that. You're not really black because you don't believe that black women should abort their babies. You don't support the black community. And she would probably then call up somebody like, some black person that she knows in a tertiary manner and get their validation, thereby negating everything that I'd said. But the thing about her and Emily Ratajkowski and the others who have joined this recent bandwagon is that I just wonder if they read their own words. If they read that Mitt Romney said black women should abort more of their babies because it lowers crime, they would be up in arms. I believe that if a white Republican man said this, these women would lose their minds.
Yeah, of course they would. The thing is, for them, abortion is a sacrament. They believe in it every bit as much as you and I believe in Jesus Christ. It can't. questioned on it. You can't reason with them about it because it's an article of faith for them. And that's the hard barrier to get over. You know, it's hard to convince them when they're true believers like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. So to circle back around to this whole idea that these companies are going to get any kind of action out of boycotting states like Georgia. The legislature in Georgia, people say Georgia is like a purple state. It's no longer truly red, but it's definitely like moving in the Democrats' direction. But do they have enough control yet with which just, $500 million to the ACLU could actually reverse the actions that are being taken by the Republican-controlled legislature?
Well, one thing you see in Georgia, and it's very similar to what we have in Ohio. Ohio, for all the battleground state talk, is a very red state. The legislature, every state office has been red for several election cycles now. But you have the cities, and you have the same thing in Georgia with cities like Atlanta that are much more liberal. And but it's all going to be up to the state legislature and whether they have the backbone to stand up to these people. The thing with these tax credits, the movie tax credits, is they don't even really work. Studies have shown that they don't really create jobs. There may be some temporary jobs, but there's not a net job gain from them. But everybody thinks, it's like the lottery. They think they can win something and they'll get lucky and make a crap ton of money out of it. But it doesn't usually pan out. So hopefully, some smart people in the legislature will see that and not bow to the pressure from these poly weirdos.
Yeah, they are weird. And I don't know, Paula, how long do you think the production staff of Hollywood females, how long do you think they can go without having access to an abortion when they're working on a film crew? Because that was my immediate question.
Yeah, and I wrote something at PJ Media about that today. Like, they can't go a month without an abortion, and even if they can't, they can certainly fly to L.A. and get a quickie abortion if they have an emergency. But what is going on there that they need an abortion every month or every couple months? It's very strange.
Okay,
that's so important to them.
Well, and then can we also just discuss, because the Me Too movement came out of Harvey Weinstein and Hollywood. Is it because they need access to abortions because so many women are being sexually assaulted in Hollywood and they're bringing their sexual assaults to Georgia and they want to make sure they can get their abortions?
It sure makes you wonder, doesn't it? Most normal people, when they're evaluating whether they should take a job, they look at salary and health care benefits and, whether they can have vacation time. But the Hollywood people and the actresses, they're looking at whether they can get a quick abortion without a lot of trouble. That's their big criteria for a job.
Paula, where are we shooting for the new movie? And you're like, Georgia. And I'm like, wait a minute. We can't get abortions there. It just makes you wonder, how does that
I've got to get my one baby killing in a month.
Right. Well,
I'm not going to be able to do it in Georgia, so let's go somewhere else.
Yeah, invariably, at least a few of us on the film crew will need abortions during the filming. How long is the filming? 90 days. Oh yeah, we're definitely going to need some abortions.
We're out.
Yeah. I mean, so what? It makes you wonder what really goes on there.
You can get not to mention the fact you can get abortions over the phone now or by video.
Oh, telemed. Right.
Right. So what, can they at least do that? But no, that would come and impose their morality on the people of Georgia, who are much more conservative and have indicated that they don't want mass killings of babies.
Well, and also because one of the things that I notice people will tout on online social media is how black Atlanta is. It's the largest concentration of black wealth in the country. So many black professionals living there and working there, and how philanthropic the black community that is affluent in Georgia is. And so you would think that with all of that going on, they would be careful not to alienate because that's where their workforce is coming from. 92,000 Georgians working in the film industry. It's not 92,000 only white people. It's people of all different backgrounds who fill their needs. So how is it that they could allow Anne Hathaway and others and Disney and these places to make these statements when it is utterly, it's not just reprehensible, it's insulting to blacks. If you're a black woman, it's as if they're saying, well, we don't want you to have any more kids, Stacy, because 9 times out of 10, your kids are going to be criminals. What?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it always sort of baffles me why there hasn't been more outrage in the black community over stuff like this. And, God bless Clarence Thomas for calling it out this week and calling out the eugenics history of Planned Parenthood and the sickness that's in these free abortion laws that target black communities. But it just always surprises me as a white girl here in Ohio why black community isn't marching in the streets over this. It's a bigger issue than the minimum wage. It's a bigger issue than all this white privilege stuff they're talking about. We're talking about literally killing black babies and targeting them for abortions.
And it all comes in the same week. Like I love the way, it has to be providential that the stories are now grouped together so that they get maximum traction. It's almost like they have a little bit of that kind of churn that comes with it being in the same subject matter. You've got Clarence Thomas writing in a concurring opinion at the Supreme Court that Planned Parenthood actually, through its practice of having their clinics in minority neighborhoods, has succeeded in aborting more minorities than whites, the majority of the population. Mm-hmm. And that was Margaret Sanger's intent with birth control, not so much abortion, but that the eugenics movement will use any tool by which to get rid of society's weeds, which primarily is those who are specially abled and black people. Mm-hmm. So it's a weird thing to have him, and I don't mean it's weird. I agree with what he wrote, but it's weird to have it coming up that he wrote that opinion and it comes out. You have this story. You have Emily Ratajkowski, whatever. You have that model make her statement 2 weeks ago. You have Anne Hathaway make her statement like last week. The concurring opinion from Clarence Thomas comes out about how we're going to have to make a decision about whether Roe v. Wade and its application is actually being used as a tool to eliminate black people, which is racism, which cannot be condoned by the Supreme Court. And this whole conversation, Missouri's bill, the heartbeat bill, you have Louisiana signing legislation, Georgia signing legislation, and then New York kind of started the ball rolling with the conversation with Northam and infanticide. It's just the crescendo cannot be, you can't ignore this.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's become dinner table conversations for a lot of people. And, the good thing about this, if there can be any good thing, which there's not a lot of good in this, but the left is really exposing themselves. They're really, keep talking. We won't keep saying crazy stuff like this. One, it'll get Trump reelected easily, and two, it will change public opinion on abortion when people see it for what it is and hear people talking like Anne Hathaway is talking. That more of that. Keep it up.
Well, the other unintended consequence of Anne Hathaway's comments is because I loved her in The Devil Wears Prada. And I found her to be a pretty talented actress in other areas. When she does comedy, it's really weird how funny she is because by the look of her, she shouldn't be able to do comedy, but she can. And so this comment by her has really turned me off of her as an actress. And so I don't care what she's acting in the future, knowing that she thinks that my children, just because I'm black, they are criminals, makes it impossible for me to go see movies or projects that she is in. I mean, she's totally, it's not just the insult that she's delivered to me as a person who's permanently tanned, but it's the fact that she was so bold as to say it and she hasn't taken it back. I can't get down with that.
She doesn't see a problem with it, but moviegoers like you, when you see someone that ugly in real life,
we're gonna take action.
Why do I want to spend our money for that?
Exactly. Paula Bolyard, managing editor for PJ Media. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you, Stacy. Have a good one.
All right, talk to you again soon. We will be back with more after these messages. Stay right there.
This is Uncommon Moments. Here's former Super Bowl winning NFL coach Tony Dungy and his wife Lauren sharing from their book Uncommon Marriage.
When Tony and I married, we knew we didn't want to start a family right away.
But a couple of years later, God spoke clearly to us. During a Sunday church service, we learned about the shortage of willing foster parents in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. Lauren and I decided to meet with the guest speakers after the service. We left feeling that we could give some of that love and attention the children weren't getting.
We prayed about it, and God opened the door. It wasn't much later that we were approved to be foster parents. If God is telling you and your spouse to take a leap of faith, pray about it and watch Him lead you.
Tony and Lauren Dungy, authors of Uncommon Marriage, learning about lasting love and overcoming life's obstacles together. Discover more at CoachDungy.com.
Family is an institution set forth by God, one man and one woman for life, with the outflow being children produced by that union. It's obvious to all that there is an attack on the family in our country, and especially on fathers. Whether it's the cycle of sin that persists in our families or the pressure from our government to exclude men from being intimately involved, the strategic battle is on for the souls of men. Join us in the battle to strengthen fatherhood. UrbanFamilyTalk.com.
Just as David's mighty man Benaiah chased down a lion into a pit on a snowy day, Lion Chasers champions uncommon men and women of faith who are unafraid to stand up and speak truth to power in these dark and evil days. Never before has there been such a need for people of faith to draw a line in the sand with the sword of truth. Lion Chasers, the intersection of faith and public policy with Lonnie Poindexter. Weekday mornings at 10 Central on Urban Family Talk.
This is Poll Paris with Fox News Director of Polling, Dana Blanton.
Here are 5 takeaways on the Russia investigation from our Fox News poll. Number 1, since Special Counsel Robert Mueller completed his investigation, which did not find evidence of a criminal conspiracy between Trump associates and Russia, approval of how Mueller handled the probe has gone up 15 points among Republicans and dropped 27 points among Democrats. Overall, 46% of voters approve. 2, more voters trust Robert Mueller than trust President Trump or Attorney General William Barr. Mueller tops both by nearly 20 points. 3, the Attorney General is looking into whether the initial investigation of the Trump campaign was legally predicated. A majority of voters thinks there is a chance the FBI broke the law. 4, voters are wary of Attorney General Barr's motive. By a 12-point margin, more think he is covering up for the president than being transparent. Last one, by a 50 to 42% margin, voters oppose impeachment of President Trump. I'm Dana Blanton, and that's your Poll Paris.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
Ken Starr issued an independent counsel report on Bill Clinton. He used the word guilty 11 times. 6 of them were obstruction of justice. It wasn't complicated. He didn't say we have to indict. He just said, you asked me to report, here's my report. He's guilty. He did these things. Now, if Mueller felt that if Mueller used the word guilty once, we'd be in a different world. But Mueller wrote this convoluted, complex, two entire chapters, and doesn't conclude anything that is dispositive. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but as a historian, I look at that stuff, and it certainly didn't come down and say President Trump is guilty of anything, where Starr said unequivocally that Clinton was guilty on 11 counts. And that's a major difference of where we are today. Both Comey and Mueller are trying to have it both ways. They'd like to be statesmen. They'd like for everybody to respect them. But in Mueller's case, he had 2 full years. He had a huge team. They wrote a report. Now, if they can't get their report right, I don't know why they're coming back later to tell us what it is they wish they might have said. And I think Mueller's better off, frankly, just it's over, go home, relax. In Comey's case, I think he's scared to death of what Attorney General Barr is doing, and the fact that a lot of stuff's going to be come public that's going to make Comey's directorship look really, really bad.
Okay, so welcome back to the show. Thank you for being here with us today at Stacy on the Right on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you for checking those sites out. That's, of course, Newt Gingrich talking about how Comey is scared to death of Barr in the investigation because it might find out that the FBI acted illegally and it would take away his popularity. As you heard, polling shows that Comey is still very popular. Mueller is more popular than Barr and the president. And this is something that they want to maintain. They want to maintain their popularity. The other thing that I think a lot of us haven't really considered, because we're just, honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm sitting out in a cornfield somewhere with a, 1982 or 1991 computer, the big fat back computer that had the black screen and the green letters. And I feel like I'm out in the hinterlands, typing wildly and using whatever the original just textual version of the internet was. And that the liberals are all on the East Coast and the West Coast, and they have all the latest technology, and they still don't know anything. I feel like we're out in the Stone Ages, and we at least are informed, and they've got everything at their disposal, and they still don't know anything. And the reason I say that is because it's pretty obvious, and I discussed this just a tad yesterday on the show. It's pretty obvious to me that this guy, Mueller, to be more specific, I shouldn't call him this guy, Mueller, he is terrified of submitting to questioning by the Republican members of Congress. He'll do anything to avoid it. He's shutting that office down. There's going to be nothing but crickets and dust bunnies up in that joint. It'll be so cleared out, people won't even realize it was ever a space that was used by the special prosecuting team. A lot of the attorneys had already started leaving months ago because the investigation was complete and all of them weren't needed to finish up the report, or the parts of the report that they were submitting, those parts were finished. But for Mueller to come out and basically say, you know what, Democrats, I'll give you reason to impeach. I couldn't give you an indictment. I couldn't give you a recommendation, but I'll give you reason to impeach. Just don't make me sit on television in public before the American people and be questioned by these Republicans. Because the Democrats are going to softball it. Because, they've been saying mean things about him. Have you noticed the tide change in what they've been saying about Mueller? Not too long ago, they were saying that Mueller was, what did they say? They said he was duplicitous. He didn't do a good job. He was a disappointment. That was after the Mueller report came out. Now they're back to saying he's above reproach. He is a man of, integrity, blah, blah, blah. They're using their hushed tones to exalt him because he gave them what they needed. But Democrats are never satisfied. And when they promise you something, they don't mean it. So they have promised him that he won't have to come testify before Congress. But if they can't get the wherewithal together, if the poll numbers don't look right, they still might call him. They're those people that come to you and say, I just want to know. I'm not going to use the information. Just give it to me in confidence. Just tell me the truth. I just want to know. And so you're like, well, I can't. It's confidential. I can't really tell you. Just tell me. Just tell me and I'll keep it between us. It's just for my own personal knowledge base. Just settle my heart. Just help me to settle this down. And then you say, okay, fine. Here it is. Here's what I know. But you can't use it because there's no way I can verify this in public because I'm not even supposed to know. It's classified. It's this, it's that. It's sealed. It's whatever. And then a week later, they're like, I'm going to need you to verify this information you gave me. You're like, this was told to you in confidence. It's off the record. A friend of mine's writing an article about it, and I need to use you as a source. Do you mind if I give him your name and phone number? No, you can't. You promised. That's Democrats. And the best example of how a Democrat will do you? Look at any inner city in America. And look at what they promised. They said, black folks, vote us in. You live in inner cities and white people are moving out to the burbs. And so you vote us in and we will make these inner city environments better than the suburbs. We will increase your taxes for more services. We will be in control of the schools and the schools will be better than those in the suburbs. Just give us control and we will make things right for you. We'll get the government to pay for the improvements that are needed in the city. We'll get them to pay for the schools. We'll get them to pay for everything. Just vote us in. And 109 years later, some cities, it's 66 years, it's 80 years, it's 50 years. It doesn't matter. Since the Democrats have been in control, you see nothing but fiscal irresponsibility, failing schools, rampant crime, and blacks living in abject poverty, generational poverty. So, instead of Anne Hathaway fixing her lips to talk about that, or fixing her little hand, her well-manicured hand, to her checkbook to write some checks to some inner city schools to get those air conditioning units installed, or to get more teachers there than they have security staff, or maybe to get some community centers that actually train parents on how to interact with teachers at schools instead of just babysitting and corralling fatherless kids, getting environments where training can happen in inner cities, where people can learn how to get out of the situation they're currently in. Because she could really make a difference with the kind of wealth that she has, y'all. You know, I know you might be noticing I point this out a lot. When I come across a rich person, I don't want to take their money from them. I don't need to have it distributed again away from them and into the pockets of a poor person by way of the federal government. I don't believe that armed theft is correct. I think someone like Anne Hathaway, who thinks she knows what's best for Black women, should put her money where her big mouth is. If she really thinks she knows what's best for Black children, she should write some checks. She should go into these inner city neighborhoods and ask them, what do you need? What would actually make this neighborhood better for you? And then do that. Instead of acting like she knows something because she's been in Hollywood for 10 years, you know, acting on play movie sets. It's all well and good for me to have seen her in The Devil Wears Prada, but she was acting in that movie. She was in Chicago acting. She was in Paris acting. Those weren't real scenarios. And so it was entertaining, to be sure. But after watching her act in that and a number of other films in which, you know, I was entertained, now I come to find out that she's a eugenicist and a racist. And the antidote to that is Jesus Christ. And I certainly hope and pray that she would come to know him. Also, what she could do to help herself out is actually go into some of these environments. Oh, she'd get armed up, to be sure. Her little gun control loving self would get her some armed security if she was to go into an inner city neighborhood. But that's all good. You know, a lot of stars roll with a lot of heavy security. Roll with it. I don't care how you get there, but Anne Hathaway, take yourself into the inner city and talk to some Black women about why they're having so many abortions. Ask them, do you feel targeted by Planned Parenthood? They'll probably say no. Ask them why they feel hopeless. Do you feel hopeless? Is that why you would prefer to have an abortion as opposed to, you know, having another baby? You know, what is driving this? How about she just go do a little research on her own? It's not like she can't, like that, have a chartered plane loaded up with security and all of her suitcases and luggage for her many outfit changes, take her to any inner city. She doesn't even have to fly a charter plane. She could go to LA. That's an inner city environment controlled by Democrats, by the way. It's heavily Hispanic now, but Hispanics have more abortions than white women. So, you know, she could start working her way down. It's not about me hating her because she's got a lot of money. I don't hate her, and I think it's wonderful that she has a lot of money. I think that's great. But I do think if you're going to have all that money and you're going to put your mouth out there in the public space and start talking about Black women like you know what Black women are going through. I can tell you how many times Black women, individually have said, well, I'm not sure you really can talk about that because, yes, you're Black, but you don't live in the inner city. Now, we did live in the city of St. Louis for years. So, I do have that in our background, but we weren't impoverished while we were living there. And for some people, you can't even talk about the Black experience or talk about improving situations for Blacks unless you're actually living in the city. See, they keep adding on all these different things. So I, as a Black woman, can't talk about what would help improve the lives of Black people in America because I don't live in the inner city currently. But Anne Hathaway, who's never, ever been to an inner city environment and sat down with a group of Black people and said, tell me what it is. Tell me what do you know? What do you know good? What do you know bad? Tell me how life works for you right here. Show me how it works for you. Let me see how you live on a day-to-day basis. Let me see how you interact with these government agencies. Let me see how the police are operating in your neighborhood. Let me see the crime. Show me where the criminals. Show me. She's never done that. I at least have been in the inner city before, and I am well acquainted with what is wrong there. And I would never say, the answer to what we're seeing here is that we need more abortions. Black women just shouldn't be having so many babies. The saddest part about what she said is not just Anne Hathaway, white chick, who believes that. There are plenty of affluent Black women who believe that too. And they've said it to my face. Better to abort them than to bring them into a world of poverty and degradation. And you know it got hot with me after I had somebody say that to my face. But it never changes their mind. You can get hot, you can say whatever you want, but it doesn't change the way they feel because they're depraved and indifferent and they're bloodthirsty. Anne Hathaway and all the rest of them. The good news is now they're so bold, they'll show us who they are. They'll tell us who they are. And in doing so, I get to now not watch any more Anne Hathaway movies. Thank God she let herself out there so I know. But nobody has still seen her be held accountable for what she said and actually put her money where her mouth is, which is all I'd like to see her do. Not all of her money, just some of it. Just whatever she feels is appropriate with her rich self. Not because I hate any of that, but because it's appropriate for her to use the largesse that she has earned to validate these opinions that she holds, as rancid as they are, or to shut up about it. All right, let's go to the phones. Hey, Teresa in Texas. Thanks for calling the show.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just calling because I'm just curious. You were saying that the black women in the inner city, they don't have, are you saying they don't have ways to keep from getting pregnant? Is that what you're trying to say?
No.
You said that she should go. Okay, go ahead.
No, I'm not saying that. The way to keep from getting pregnant is to not have sex. I'm aware of that, and I think that they should know that.
But
yeah.
Okay, well, the way you put it made it sound like that the black women are having these abortions because they have no means of protecting themselves from getting pregnant. That's the way it sounded to me. So I was just curious if the women, and then I know that even in Texas we call them the slums here, and y'all call them the inner cities, I guess, in the state you're from. But it's still the same thing. They're poor people, but you got poor white people. You got poor white girls in those slums, in those inner cities, and you got poor Mexican girls. You know, it's not just the blacks. And I am sorry that Anne Hathaway said what she said, because that's wrong. But I was just kind of wondering, because you're heating up the radio, sweetie, with your temper.
Yeah, I am. But the reason why I'm making the point about blacks.
You got a right to now.
Well, but listen to what I'm saying, because you're making the point that I'm saying. You know, there's a couple things here. First of all, obviously, black women and every other kind of women, everybody knows how you can avoid getting pregnant with an unwanted pregnancy. But the majority of the abortions that are had in this country are due to contraception. Health of the mother is less than 1%, and rape is right around 1%, rape or incest. So 98%, 97% of the abortions are simply, I didn't use any contraception, and so I'm going to have an abortion. That's the first thing. The second thing is, out of all of the different ethnic groups in this country, the black community, black women, have the highest rate of abortion. Some years, 40% of all pregnancies for black women are abortions. In New York, more babies are aborted than are born alive to black women. So the reason I'm highlighting what Anne Hathaway said and connecting it to eugenics and all of that is because Clarence Thomas just connected it a couple of days ago. I've been connecting it for years. This is a targeted effort towards poor black women to get them to abort their babies, and it's been working for 40 plus years. I'm heating up the radio waves, not for my own sake, but for the sake of the babies. We've aborted 16 million black babies since the passage of Roe v. Wade. 40% of the black population is gone. And women are suffering because they're post-abortive and they've never received the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And if I can't heat their airwaves up over that, then I don't need to be here. I'm going to continue to light it up on behalf of those unborn, because that's what I'm called here to do. We'll be back with more, and if you're leaving us now, God bless you from the heartland.
Urban Family Talk. Urban Family Talk.
Always stay up to date with the latest in the culture war from the news team of One News Now. Use the One News Now mobile app. It neatly categorizes news and articles from the One News Now website in an easy-to-find format. You can read the stories, watch videos, and conveniently share any news story. It's now available for download from your phone's app store.
Truth
wisdom, empowerment. Urban Family Talk, a ministry of the American Family Association.
For American Family News, I'm Chris Woodward. President Donald Trump is assailing special counsel Robert Mueller as a never-Trumper and as a rejected, conflicted job seeker. The criticism comes a day after Mueller rebuffed the president's repeated claims that the Russia investigation had cleared Trump of committing a crime of obstruction of justice. The group privately building a border wall in New Mexico says it is nearing the completion of its project. Jeff Manasso has more.
The group We Build the Wall unveiling its new 18-foot, almost completed, mile-long steel border fencing it built via crowdfunding on private land in Sunland Park, New Mexico, just weeks after learning
the property owner here was suffering incredible theft, violence, and trafficking across his property.
The group's general counsel, Chris Kobach, construction briefly halted over permitting issues. The group says with more donations that it plans to get started on more border fencing on private lands, perhaps in Texas or California. Jeff Manasso, Fox News.
Former Mississippi Senator Thad Cochran has died. Elected to the U.S. House in 1972, Cochran won a Senate seat in 1978 and became the first Republican since Reconstruction to win statewide office in Mississippi. Dale Moore, Executive Vice President of American Farm Bureau Federation, says Cochran will be missed.
I had the privilege in all the different jobs I've had in Washington, D.C. to benefit from, Senator Thad Cochran's leadership. His decades of service, he's been a champion for farmers and ranchers, not just in his home state of Mississippi. But, Chris, I got to tell you, he's, when we look at whether we're talking getting a farm bill done and his role with the Senate Agriculture Committee, not only as a ranking member, but as chairman of that committee. Certainly his role in agricultural appropriations over the years as the subcommittee chair and later the full committee chair on Senate appropriations. Just an amazing amount of things he's done. He chaired, when Congress stood up their Committee on Homeland Security. Mr. Cochran was the first chair of that and was, just a tremendous leader in getting that department up and running when President Bush was creating the department.
Known for working across party lines, Cochran easily won most of his re-election campaigns. However, he struggled before winning a 2014 Republican primary over Chris McDaniel, a Tea Party-backed state lawmaker. A fan injury at a Cubs game raises questions about safety. Jared Max reports.
Scary scene at Houston's Minute Maid Park at last night's Astros-Cubs game.
Oh, look out, people.
On ESPN, a line drive off the bat of the Cubs' Albert Almora Jr. hit a young girl seated just beyond protective netting past the visitors' dugout.
I want to put a net around the whole stadium.
Albert Almora Jr. speaking to NBC Sports Chicago. More safety netting was added to MLB parks for the 2018 season. Now there's talk about beyond just visitors' dugouts.
Any safety measure we can take to, make sure that fans are safe, we should do it.
The Cubs' Chris Bryant told ESPN being safer will not ruin the game.
You can see through these fences here.
Young girl was hospitalized, her condition unknown.
A brazen thief in Michigan hit the same store 3 times in one day. Jane Ferguson has that story.
Police say 34-year-old Matthew Brown stole electronics from a Walmart in Alpena in northern Michigan and drove off in his Saturn Vue. Then he returned to the store, grabbed a few more electronics, and hit the road again. But apparently, 3rd time's the charm, because according to officials, Brown went back to the same Walmart, shoplifted even more electronics, and once again made his escape. In all, police say Brown stole $6,000 in merchandise, but a few weeks later, he was caught and most of the stolen items were recovered. Now the 3-time thief faces 5 years in prison. Jane Fergus, Fox News.
And in world news this hour, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has failed to form a governing coalition, and now Israel faces an historic second snap election this year. The newly chosen Knesset was disbanded after less than 2 months, and the election has now been set for September 17th. Just weeks ago, this seemed to be an improbable scenario.
Doc, I've been feeling a little out of sorts lately. Can you help?
Well, let's try a few questions. What do you think of when I say the word Roku?
Oh, my wife and I used to love that dance when we were younger.
Yes, I'd say you're a little out of touch.
What do you recommend?
I recommend you listen to AFR.
American Family Radio. Available on Apple and Android products, Amazon Alexa, and now available on Roku.
And then we'd whip, and then we'd nay-nay. Oh, it was wonderful.
She's sharp, pointed, and insightful. This is Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talker.
Now, Russia did not help me get elected. You know who got me elected? You know who got me elected? I got me elected. Russia didn't help me at all. This was all about Russia, Russia, Russia. They don't talk about Russia anymore because it turned out to be a hoax. It was all a hoax. And then they say, gee, he fought back. Isn't that terrible? He fought back. Of course I fight back. Because it was a false accusation. A totally false accusation. And it's a disgrace. And it's a very sad period for this country. And I think in the end, I will consider what's happening now to be one of my greatest achievements, exposing this corruption.
And now, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to the program. I'm going to give you guys a little programming note. It really, really gets under my skin when I bring up the black abortion rate, when I talk about what is going on in the black community and the genocide that is occurring, that Planned Parenthood operates under the mantle of Margaret Sanger, and that they do this because that is what they were ordained to do, and that is Satan's work going on, and that we as Christians have to rise up against it. And someone calls and says, white women have abortions too, white women are poor too. That hurts. And so instead of getting on here and crying about abortion, because I do that on my own time in the prayer closet, I'm going to get on here and I'm going to be angry about it. Do you know why? Because those are human babies. And if we can't get angry about that as Christians, as people of faith, as people who claim to love God, your hands are raised up on Sunday, and that's Planned Parenthood's biggest day. Your hands are up, the music is loud, and the babies are dying. And so, pardon me if I get angry on these radio waves about abortion. All of it, but specifically what's going on in the black community, because that is genocide. If you had huge numbers of white women aborting babies at the same rate as was happening in the black community, it would be a public health crisis. But it's not a public health crisis because it's what was meant to be. And so, pardon me for getting a little upset about what's happening with the unborn in this country. While you think it's okay and you wear the mantle of complacency, I'm going to continue to pound on the gates of heaven for those babies. Because we're going to see an end to lawful abortion in this country, or we're going to see glory. We're going to see glory either way. But that's what I'm working towards. And so if you don't like the methods, if you don't like the tenor of my conversation on that topic, sounds like a you problem. But my Father in heaven numbers my tears. He knows the hairs on my head. He knew my name before he formed the deep. And that same knowledge and love that he has for me, he has for every unborn baby. And if I'm called to the mission field for the babies, then that's where I'll be. And no amount of criticism or commentary will pull me off of my mission. And when you get a mind for something that God has for you to do like that, you understand where I'm coming from, and you know you're never going to let it go. And I'm never going to let it go. And so for those who can't handle the fire, back up, get out of the kitchen, but you can't put it out. This is white hot volcanic liquid flowing from here. And if you can't handle it, then that sounds like a you problem. This hour on the program, you are the guest. You can call in at 866-963-2037. And we're going to be talking about McConnell, the Supreme Court vacancy, Dershowitz, all of it. I want to get some audio that we missed from last segment. It's Gingrich talking about how they interviewed 500 people and actually put Americans in solitary confinement trying to get the president out of office. It's number 4.
Come on. I mean, give me a break. They interviewed 500 people. They spent millions and millions of dollars. They put several people in solitary confinement for lengths of time which frankly should be un-American. If they didn't find it, what are they complaining about? They had all the resources. They had a whole bunch of very smart left-wing lawyers, all of whom disliked Trump. They went all out, and they didn't get anything. Now, at some point in the hunt, you got to decide there's no deer in the forest. And the fact is, they couldn't prove anything. And they ought to relax and just say, you know, in the absence of proof in America, you are innocent. Therefore, by definition, President Trump is innocent.
So innocent until proven guilty, which is what I was going to say yesterday. Innocent until proven guilty. Innocent until proven guilty. You do not in America have to prove that you are innocent. You don't have to prove you're not guilty. You simply are innocent until some body proves that you're guilty. And it has to be done in front of a jury of your own peers, which for the president, the only mechanism by which they can do this is impeachment. So, and it's interesting because if you're strictly on the party line, then you could actually vote the president guilty of something without him being guilty of it. So it's not a true jury of his peers because they have motives that are political. But I want to highlight something he said that stuck out to me, which is that people were actually put in solitary confinement. Is this not America? Outrage. People should be marching on Washington for that revelation. And I'll tell you this. In prior years, prior Americans, we were a different breed, they would have been. But now it's like, well, you know, it wasn't anybody I know or it wasn't me. So, you know, maybe they deserved it. I don't think so. For an investigation into Russian collusion, notice how everyone now is actually talking about the possibility. Well, are you saying that James Comey could be guilty of, treason? Because people know what happens. Treason, that's punishable by the death penalty. We haven't found anybody guilty of treason, and I can't remember if historically we've ever found anybody guilty of treason in this country. The punishment is deterrent enough. Now, we've had spies and stuff like that, but treason? So I don't think the president is tossing that term around lightly, but I do hope that people will understand that it's not about him wanting people to get killed. It's about him wanting justice to be served in this situation. What has happened to some people who've been involved in this is not right. And they deserve justice. The investigation into the other side is what I'm talking about. So this was one of my favorite bits of audio from yesterday, but we had so many fantastic callers, we didn't get to it. And by the way, you can call in 866-963-2037. Warning, if you call in here to try to, come at me about abortion, I'm going to light you on fire. So just know that. If that's what you're wanting, call in and I'll give it to you. I'm happy to light you on fire, but that's what you're getting today. So McConnell, on possible Supreme Court vacancy in 2020, he was sipping some water and said, oh, we'll fill it. It's number 2.
We'd fill it. Yeah, the reason I started with the judges, as important as all these other things are that we're talking about, I mean, if you want to have a long-lasting positive impact on the country, everything else changes. You know, I remember during the tax bill, there were people agonizing over whether one part of the tax bill was permanent or not. I said, look, the only way the tax bill is permanent depends upon the next election. Because people have different views about taxes in the two parties and approach it differently when they get in power. What can't be undone is a lifetime appointment to a young man or woman who believes in the quaint notion that the job of judge is to follow the law. So that's the most important thing we've done for the country, which cannot be undone.
So I love his dedication to this issue because, as he has articulated on numerous occasions and did so just then, he's making changes that will prevent a future president, Republican or Democrat, from having activist judges enact the will of an ideology instead of maintaining and upholding the Constitution and the will of the founders, which is the will of the governed, the consent of the governed, the will of the people. So it is super important for us that Mitch McConnell not go off task. I do wish, I sincerely pray that Mitch McConnell could come to a revelation of what this open borders policy is doing to this country and that he could be more supportive to the president on the issue of immigration. But his work in the arena of the judges, the appointment of judges who have lifetime appointments, it can't be overstated the importance of that work. And so you're kind of in a situation with Mitch McConnell, the same kind of situation you're in with, President Trump. President Trump said he was fine with, gay marriage, good for him. Talking about Pete Buttigieg. He said a couple of other things that I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I disagree. But he's also the most pro-life president we've ever had. And so, I'll take my wins where I can get them. And if we're winning on the issue of life and he's not willing to run up against the buzzsaw that is a previous Supreme Court ruling called Obergefell, okay, it's not that I'm fine with or like those comments, but I'm okay with the lay of the land if this is what he's going to do. And so it's a constant measuring and going back and forth where you're just saying, wow, what did he just say? Oh, but what did he just do? Oh, okay. It's a constant thing. We just have to remember to pray for him because he's got just as much. If you think about the pressure that you're under at your workplace or in your family situation, and believe me, I know what that feels like, where you don't share the same politics and people are pressuring you to come back home, come to the other side, come to the right side of history and all that malarkey. When that's happening to you and you feel that pressure and you just want to be in relationship with your family or your coworkers or your friends, you don't want it to be about politics, but that's all it seems to be. Now multiply that times 10 million. And that's where the president is, because it's not just family or anything like that, because Ivanka and Jared are they're liberals. They're fiscal conservatives, but they're socially liberal. And he loves Ivanka and he works closely with her, has done for the past 20 some odd years. So of course he wants to be just, let's not fight about these issues. Let's not talk about these. But there's also core supporters who are on different sides of this thing. People that he knows and has worked with for a long time that happen to be open homosexuals. So the president has these same pressures on him. There's no excuse. We have to look at the word of God and we have to say, this is my divining rod and this is where I'm going to stand on this. I'm standing on this, on all of these issues, no matter how hard the pressure from your family and everything else goes. Don't take this wrong. I'm not saying because Donald Trump is yielding on a couple of areas that that's what we're supposed to do. Oh, no, the opposite. Actually, the opposite. Find what the word of God says and grab onto it with both hands like the horns on the altar and don't let go. But I can't tell Donald Trump what to do other than with my vote. And he's on the right side of life all day. And we need that right now. If that is our core issue, if that is your number one issue, as it is for me, then that is what we have to be focused on. The border is huge. You guys know I want to see movement on that. And I'm praying for that as well. But the pro-life issue, that's the number one issue. So, take that as you may. So we talked about, speaking of Mitch McConnell, to circle back around, Mitch McConnell talking about, yes, we're going to fill it. So a bunch of people said that was a double standard. And I got to give this to you right here. Everyone is losing their minds. Leader McConnell was in Paducah, Kentucky. And he was talking about, a vacancy created in a presidential year. The leader has noted on multiple occasions that not since the 1880s has a vacancy created in a presidential year been confirmed by the party opposite the occupant of the White House. His comments in Paducah yesterday simply confirmed this. The reason why he would go forward with an appointment in an election year is because the Republicans control the confirming body for the Supreme Court of the United States, which is the Senate, and they control the White House. If the Republicans didn't control the Senate, then he's saying, according to the precedent set by so many other sitting presidents and senates, he would not confirm. So he has not changed. It's not a double standard. He's not backtracked. Let me give you the quotes because he's quoted numerous times. So 2020 Republican White House, Republican Senate would not be the same as a 2016 White House, which was Democrat White House, Republican Senate. Leader McConnell on the Senate floor, he said, of course, it's within the president's authority to nominate a successor, even though in a very rare circumstance, remember that the Senate has not filled a vacancy arising in an election year when there was a divided government since 1888, almost 130 years ago. Leader McConnell said on March 1st, 2016, that You'd have to go back to 1888 when Grover Cleveland was in the White House to find the last time a vacancy created in a presidential year was confirmed by the party opposite the occupant in the White House. He's consistent. Find something else to whine about, liberals. We'll be back with more after this.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman, president of American Family Association and American Family Radio. You know, I'm asked often what my favorite part of the Holy Land tour is. And that's like choosing between your children, right? That's very hard to pick just one place to see or to visit that's the most special. But to me, it's the boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, I guess, is number one. That's just a very special day because, you know, that's exactly where Jesus was, the Sea of Galilee. We're seeing the same terrain that Jesus saw. But there's so much more to our visit to the Holy Land, our trip there in March 2020. We'll go to Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Jericho, Nazareth, and on and on. If you want more information on the tour to Israel, go to twholyland.com. That's twholyland.com.
This is Viewpoints with Kirby Anderson.
29 years ago, Alan Bloom wrote the book, The Closing of the American Mind. Last week, Charles Koch wrote an op-ed with the same title. There's some similarities between the two, but also one important difference. Charles Koch looks back at the revolutionary technological advances we have made and now take for granted. He is concerned that government and the academy are stifling progress. When he attended MIT, he discovered that scientific and technological progress requires the free and open exchange of ideas. The same holds true for moral and social progress. In America, we used to believe that progress comes from the free exchange of ideas and from challenging other people's views and hypotheses. The spontaneous process of collaboration and challenge led to the technological advances we have today. Charles Koch is concerned that the U.S. is already far down the path to becoming a less open and free society, and the current cultural and political atmosphere threatens to make the situation worse. In previous commentaries, I've talked about how political correctness and bias against contrary views are transforming the colleges and universities. Charles Koch laments that education in America, and particularly in higher education, has become increasingly hostile to the free exchange of ideas. On many campuses, a climate of intellectual conformity has replaced open debate and inquiry, stifling discussion on a host of topics ranging from history to science to economics. Many liberals and progressives may dislike the Koch brothers, but I certainly hope that they would agree with his diagnosis. Nearly 3 decades ago, Alan Bloom wrote about how higher education failed democracy and impoverished the souls of today's students. Charles Koch now sees how the intellectual conformity on the campus and in government stifles innovation. This is the legacy of closed minds. I'm Kirby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
For a free copy of Kirby's booklet, A Biblical View on Anti-Semitism, go to viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism. Viewpoints.info/anti-Semitism.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
What I saw today was him putting his thumb, his elbow on the scale when he said, quote, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so. That was absolutely inappropriate for him to say. It was worse than anything that Comey said when he exonerated Hillary Clinton and then said, but she engaged in extremely careless conduct. Everybody condemned that. This is much, much worse. And it does show that he had a motive to help the Democrats here. There's no other possible motive why he would have gone out of his way to say that. He could have easily said the opposite. If we had confidence that the president didn't commit a crime, we would have said it. If we had confidence that he committed a crime, we would have said it. But no, he emphasized only the possibility the president might have committed a crime. That went well beyond his authority as special counsel. It also showed we never should have had a special counsel.
So we never should have had a special counsel, according to Dershowitz. And this is important stuff, you guys. You know, I know a lot of people are kind of really burnt out on the Mueller investigation, and they're so glad it's over, and they're so glad that Mueller is going into private life. But I can't get over how frail and weak he sounded when he was making his little, you know, it was like a deal he made with the devil or Nancy Pelosi, one or the other, where he would go out and make this one final statement saying, I don't need to testify. The report speaks for itself. Well, if it speaks for itself, then why are you coming out and making more comments? I mean, I'm just asking. Why even talk at all? Why was he out again talking and flapping his gums if it was really over? So it's not over. It's not over because AG Barr is going to do some investigating. And I'm fine with it. I am, you know what? Just let them go ahead on and do what they're going to do, because we need a resolution to exactly how it is our FBI and intelligence agencies thought they could have an insurance policy, quote unquote, how no one within those walls was willing to say, wait a minute, I'm not interested in seeing a Republican win this thing either. But what you're talking about doing is an abuse of power, an abuse of process, and it involves more than just this agency. They actually utilized the mechanisms by which you're supposed to be using them to kind of say, okay, if there's one of these forms filled out correctly, then you don't do, you don't go to the FISA court. But they just flipped it and used those forms to justify FISA applications to unmask, in which they unmask American identities. And what's infuriating about this is, you know, for those of us who don't have any contacts overseas, I mean, I do know people who still live over there, but not the kind of people who, if I was talking to them on the phone or on WhatsApp, that those people would trigger a FISA unmasking, nothing like that. But if you think about it, it feels so far away from us, right? It feels far away from, you know, just like regular Joes. But the fact is, it's close to us. And you know why? Because you don't know when you might have an opportunity to do that. And even if you never have an opportunity to talk to someone overseas who, you know, and then you would be unmasked because that person has some kind of tertiary connection to terrorism. For Americans who do have that, they're having their rights violated. And when American rights are violated, it is a problem for all of us, because if it stands for those Americans, next time it could be you and me, and we could all be in the same country, and it wouldn't have to have anything to do with terrorism, and they could be listening in on our phone conversations. And, you know, I know the little self-righteous toadies will say, well, if you're not doing anything wrong, the Constitution is not about, well, if you're not doing anything wrong. It's not you're protected and you have innate rights that are given to you by God, and if you don't do anything wrong, the government can't. No, that's not what it's about. We have a right to privacy. Regardless, we have a right to privacy. That right supersedes our actions. It's not you have a right to privacy if you're a Democrat or if you're a Republican or if you're in good standing with this organization or if the lady at the ACLU likes you or if the IRS thinks you're okay. It's you have a right to privacy, period. If your information is to be searched, your online information, your phone calls, any of it, if it's to be searched, a warrant is required. In order to get a warrant, probable cause or some kind of information that justifies the warrant has to be presented. And then you have to get the warrant before the listening, culling, taking of data, the surveillance, the spying. Before that begins, you have to have received notification that you're being investigated. You're being looked into. We're coming into your house to look at your files. We're confiscating your computer. We're coming in. We're going to get your phones. You have to have a warrant on you in order to get in. Or you can say, get out. You can't come in. That's your right. And so we're watching as our rights are eroded. Our rights are being eroded, taken down. We should never, ever be willing to give up those rights. We should never say, well, you know, so a few Americans were thrown into solitary confinement. Really? These are the kinds of things that I would hope. Yesterday we had a caller who said he just couldn't support the president. He really felt like, you know, the president was hiding something. Well, let's just think for a second. If they found someone that they wanted information out of so badly that they threw that person in solitary confinement to kind of give them a little taste, to try to motivate them to open their mouth up and share something, spill the beans, tell us what we want to know about Trump, and they went into solitary confinement and they didn't share, then what more could the president possibly be hiding beyond that? Nothing. And that's kind of the point to it. It's not kind of, it is the point to it. I want to make sure and get to, so I have two things. The president had an impromptu presser when he was departing the White House, and I want to give you a little info on that. It was a Q&A, and I have the transcript here. But first, I talked about this yesterday, that China was gearing up to weaponize rare earths. Now, rare earth elements can be found all over the planet, but China has a particularly good set of deposits of rare earth minerals, and they have made it their business to stand up companies that mine these rare earth minerals and then sell them to other nations. So Beijing is actually going to use their dominance of rare earth minerals to hit back in the deepening trade war that they're engaged in with Washington, D.C. A flurry of Chinese media reports on Wednesday, including an editorial in the flagship newspaper of the Communist Party, raised the prospect of Beijing cutting imports of the commodities that are critical in defense, energy, electronics, and automobile sectors. The world's biggest producer, China, supplies about 80% of U.S. imports of rare earths. Now, I'm going to stop there and put a pin in that and just say, one of the things that President Trump did since he's been in office is he has brought back a lot of our steel manufacturing. Not to the degree that we used to have it back, pre-World War II, that type of thing, but definitely many more opportunities to buy American-made steel. The reason why that's important to us as a country is because if we don't have any way to produce steel here in this country, we don't have the ability to make war, because we need steel for the planes and everything else. So we need steel for the ships and the bombs and the tankers. We need it for the A1M1 Abrams tanks and whatever the current iteration is. So we have to be able to manufacture our own steel. And President Trump has been saying for decades, since he's been a private citizen, long before now, that not having steel manufacturing in this country is a national security. It's of national security importance. It impacts that. So this is the same thing, in my opinion. And I'm not speaking from what I've heard the president say. I'm just going off of, just good basic common sense says that if rare earth minerals are used in defense, energy, electronics, and automobile sectors, and we have access to rare earth minerals here in this country, we should not outsource the mining and extraction of those rare earth minerals completely to Beijing. As much as we are an ally with them, they are also the number one alternative superpower seeking to usurp our dominance across the world. And that might not be such a bad thing if they were a representative republic or any kind of, so-called democratic state. But they're communists. And if they were to be the ones who were leading, directing, and behind the scenes pushing different types of policy initiatives and shaping thought about, human rights and the treatment of women and girls and disadvantaged populations, we would see a radical shift in the way our world operates. And it would have negative impacts on the United States. And especially tiny developing nations that require the assistance of the bigger nations, those countries would suffer greatly. And so it's super important that the president is making this move. What I hope and pray would occur next is that individuals with the ability to actually mine these rare earth minerals would start standing up companies and answering the need for the United States to have our own operations in this area. So this threat to weaponize strategic materials ratchets up the tension between the world's two biggest economies before an expected meeting between Presidents Xi Jinping and Donald Trump at the G20 meeting next month. It also shows how China is weighing their options after the U.S. blacklisted Huawei, cutting off the supply of American components it needs to make its smartphones and networking gear. So basically they're saying tit for tat. You don't give us what we need for Huawei, we won't give you any rare earth minerals. See how many phones you make after that. China has shown in the past that it can use the rare earth minerals as a bargaining chip when it comes to multilateral negotiations. And we shouldn't underestimate China's ability to fight the trade war. And this is according to the People's Daily, their communist newspaper. They said that don't say I didn't warn you. It's a rare Chinese phrase that means don't say I didn't warn you. The specific wording was used by the paper in 1962 before China went to war with India. And those familiar with Chinese diplomatic language know the weight of this phrase. The Global Times actually did that analysis, and they are a newspaper affiliated with the Communist Party, and they said that in an article from last April. This phrase, don't say I didn't warn you, was also used before a conflict broke out between China and Vietnam in 1979. Now, China is seriously considering restricting rare earth exports to the U.S. and may also implement other countermeasures. And, a lot of these newspapers are talking about the National Development and Reform Commission telling CCTV, which is their communist TV station, that people in the country won't be happy to see products made with exported rare earths being used to suppress China's development. Editorials in the Global Times and Shanghai Security News took similar tacks in their Wednesday editions. So this is really, really, really interesting. Now, just to be clear, the United States actually excluded the rare earth elements in the trade war. So the tariffs that were raised to 25% from 10%, we excluded their rare earth mineral producers. So also, as a bit of information, and I always love it when I find out stuff like this, because this is not my normal, like normally I'm not looking at minerals and like understanding how many we have or what have you, but this is kind of fascinating. Rare earth minerals aren't particularly rare. Cerium, the most abundant, is more common in the Earth's crust than copper. All other rare earth elements besides promethium can be found more widely than silver, gold, or platinum, according to the U.S. Geological Survey. However, concentrated and economic deposits are scarce, and production is dominated by a handful of countries. China is the biggest by far, accounting for almost 70% of global production of rare earths and 40% of the world's reserves. Now, they have a handful of producers: China Northern Rare Earth Group, Min Metals Rare Earth Company, Xiamen Tungsten Company, and Chinalco Rare Earth and Metals Company. The nation has has used the elements to make a political point in the past. They blocked exports to Japan after they had a maritime dispute with them back in 2010. And, as in response to these announcements and these newspaper articles, China Northern stock rose 9.3% in Shanghai. Linus Corporation, which is the biggest producer of rare earth products outside of China, added 16%. They're actually located in Sydney. And Hong Kong-listed China Rare Earth Holdings Limited spiked 41% after doubling in value in the month of May, so this month. So, we've previously, our country, the United States, has joined together with other nations earlier in this decade in a World Trade Organization court case to force the nation to export more rare earth minerals amid a global shortage. The World Trade Organization ruled in favor of America, and, prices slumped because people were turning away from China for alternatives. In the long run, the best thing that can happen is for us to see the seriousness of the China threat and to start mining and producing our own. The question is, can we stand up an operation like that and get the level of production that's needed to meet our needs? I don't think so. They're probably going to have to go to alternative sources for the rare earth minerals, and in the meantime, keep working on getting our own production, mining and production up to speed. Just another cleanup job for the president. I really think it's just like incompetence on the level and scale that we saw with Barack Obama is stunning. It really is. It's just stunning on almost every area. Like I defy any of you liberals who listen to the show to call in and give me an area where he just was stellar and he did a fantastic job. Yeah, he looked good in a suit. He liked to sing and slow jam the news at night on the late night talk shows. And he was a good husband and father. Besides that, what did he do? Unbelievable. Every area the president has to come in and make up a whole bunch of new headway or start us from behind as a country because of the actions of the previous president. And people are worried about the Mueller report. All right, so the president had a gaggle. This was, impromptu press conference prior to departing the White House for his trip to Colorado. And it was this morning. So he made the announcement that Turkey has released a prisoner that we were trying to get. They released him a little bit ago into home custody, and he's going to be released from home custody into the United States pretty soon. And he thanked President Erdogan. And so he talked about the economy. He's going out to Colorado to give the commencement address for the Air Force, and he's looking forward to that. He got questions from the media about the Mueller report. Does the president still think Robert Mueller behaved honorably? And he feels like, President Trump feels like the Mueller, he's totally conflicted. And that's partially because, according to President Trump, Mueller wanted to be the FBI director, and he said no. And they previously had a business dispute together. Not a nice one. Oh, and Mueller wasn't happy with what the president did to him. And that Mueller and Comey are best buds. So interesting that the president has all this backstory with these people. All right. Stay right there. We'll be back with more. 866-963-2037.
More than likely, you've seen or heard about the recent abortion law in New York City that allows babies to be aborted up to term. Your heart breaks, but you're not sure how you can make a difference in a positive way. The Ministry of Preborn invites you to help be the change. Preborn is the largest provider of free ultrasounds in the country. The Preborn Center in the heart of New York City is a light in the darkness. When a woman sees her baby on an ultrasound, she'll choose life over 80% of the time.
And I got to hear and see my baby for the first time. Hearing the heartbeat made me cry. And it was certain that I was going to keep my baby forever.
For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds, and you'll receive a story and a picture of babies whose lives were spared. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250 and say baby. Or go to preborn.com.
And my father, your great-grandfather, fought in World War II.
Really?
He was a gunner on the big ship out in the Pacific Ocean.
Wow.
Your great-grandmother did her part, too.
Was she on a ship?
Oh, no. She stayed back home. She and a lot of her friends worked really hard in a factory because the men had gone off to war.
Ooh.
And they held scrap metal drives to help in the war effort. The folks back home were heroes, too.
Here at the American Family Association, we consider you the heroes back home. As you fulfill your responsibility of caring for your family day to day, your partnership with us is crucial as we fight the enemies of freedom in America. Thank you for your commitment to the American Family Association.
Grandpa, what's a scrap metal drive?
Let's get some cookies, and I'll tell you all about it.
This is Fox on Justice. A year ago, Michael Avenatti was flying high, a superstar lawyer leveling allegations against President Trump on behalf of his client, Stormy Daniels, joining the battle over Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh, and even flirting with a presidential run. But now Avenatti has been brought low, charged with embezzlement, bank fraud, tax charges, and the defrauding of Stormy Daniels. He's denied it all.
I am not going to be intimidated from stopping what I am doing.
In an interview with Vanity Fair, Avenatti is quoted as saying, "I couldn't believe how unbelievably great everything was. Now there are days when I can't believe what a nightmare this is." He also invoked the mythical tale of Icarus, saying, "Some would argue at this point that I flew too close to the sun. As I sit here today, yes, absolutely, I know I did." Avenatti has now attacked Vanity Fair, calling the article a hit job. With Fox on Justice, Hank Weinblum, Fox News.
You can download episodes of Stacy on the Right from the podcast page on AFR.net or UrbanFamilyTalk.com. Now, back to the show on American Family Radio and Urban Family Talk.
You can say this any way you would like, but here's the bottom line. After 2 years of a political rectal exam, nobody's been looked at more than Trump. They found nothing. But the answer for the Democrats is Trump's got to go. They will not beat him at the ballot box. If they try to impeach him, they're going to ensure his reelection. I want the American people to know that Bob Mueller did his job. He looked at Trump every way you could look at Trump, and he found nothing. And this is just political revenge. It's going to blow up in their face, and I can't wait to 2020.
You got to love that Lindsey Graham. He says he can't wait until 2020. It already looks good for the president, actually. It already looks good. But it's going to look particularly good if they decide to impeach him in the House, because they can't get it done in the Senate. And let's not pretend that we don't have a couple of turncoats in there. We have 3. Mitt Romney. And it has to be some kind of curse that's going on in the Senate where the Republicans can control the Senate, but they always have a few Republican senators who aren't really Republican. And Mitt Romney's one of them. He actually criticizes the president on issues where the president is true to the platform. But beyond that, it's Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. The two of them should not be on the Republican side. They should be Democrats. Or, like the people from Alaska and Susan Collins, Maine, they should send a true Republican there. But that gets down into party politics for the groups of like, and obviously state senators are elected by the states that they come from, and these are states that are kind of turning purple. They're getting a little more liberal. So anyway, I just feel like it's kind of sad what's going on there. So there were a couple of other things. So this story is actually, I shared it and people were pointing out that it was from a little bit ago, but I don't remember covering this on air. Do you remember David Daleiden, the one who put together the Center for Medical Progress videos that actually showed that Planned Parenthood was selling the aborted baby parts for profit and that their people were so callous about it? Well, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals has issued a ruling that allows Texas to strip Planned Parenthood of their Medicaid funding. And the tapes, the Texas Health and Human Services Commission actually used the tapes from, David Daleiden, which Californian judges and Californian activists, specifically from Planned Parenthood, have said that he doctored the tapes and that they're not accurate, they're not to be used. But they're not inaccurate. So the Planned Parenthood associates were discussing the processes by which organs from the remains of aborted children could be harvested and donated for a fee, and they claim that those were selectively edited. The ruling affirms that Planned Parenthood associates did indeed circumvent legal and ethical guidelines in pursuit of harvesting human organs, and all of this is in direct contradiction to what the so-called Women's Health Organization and its eager defenders in the press claimed after the tapes were released in 2015. The Fifth Circuit's decision includes two key quotes, and I won't read them here. They're very graphic. Remember, the Center for Medical Progress videos are some of the most graphic, videos that you can watch in their complete and utter infiltration of Planned Parenthood, the organization. And so I won't read them here, but the videos were not selectively edited. And I know that for some people, they're like, well, I did read that story. But for everyone who missed it like me, that's good news. And I love sharing good news. To see David Daleiden be vindicated, the man actually went into the belly of the beast and withstood and then came back out. And a lot of people, I wonder if they would have been able to withstand what happened to him, them storming his house, confiscating the videos, putting a gag order on him so he couldn't release them anymore, shutting him down, shutting his website down for a time. The prosecution of them, he was jailed for a while. I mean, it just an amazing story of someone who just would not give up. He was like a dog on a bone, a dog that hadn't had any breakfast or dinner for like 2 weeks. He was crazy, rabidly committed to this cause. And it was, to me, there were a number of people swinging the axe, just hitting the tree and making their mark. But it was those undercover videos, I felt like that it was the first time we heard a crack in that tree and understood that it was falling, was when people around the country were watching those videos and crying on live streams and crying on Twitter and just talking about how much the devastation of realizing that this organization that they previously respected and supported and even went to for what they call reproductive care outside of abortions, that's what they were doing. It was an amazing thing that he accomplished. And so it's great to see him have some vindication. So we have to, we have to be happy for what we can get, right? So additionally, y'all might have heard that Nancy Pelosi was giving a little bit of, like she was giving some thought to possibly entertaining a little bit of impeachment. It's not true. According to CNN Politics, I know, according to CNN Politics, she is resisting pressure along with Jerry Nadler, which is funny, interesting, not funny, haha. They're resisting pressure from the left to open an impeachment inquiry. They were actually told that, get it done, Nancy and Jerry, to do it on Wednesday, even though Robert Mueller's announcement seemed like it was gift wrap for them, like, you can do it now. Now you can go ahead and do it. They pledged to continue the House investigations into alleged wrongdoing. But I think, she says, well, first of all, Pelosi says she thinks only about 15% of House Democrats are outspoken on impeachment at this time, but she says nothing is off the table. I think it's off the table for Nancy because she knows what happens. They lose big in 2020 if they do it. I want them to do it. Do it, Nan. Get it done. But I don't think she's going to do it. I think she's going to resist. But there is something else that might happen. Nancy Pelosi might experience a coup at the hands of fellow Democrats who call themselves more progressive than she, and she might end up losing the speaker gavel, if not before 2020, in 2020, if the Democrats should lose the House. So she's trying to get all of the soldiers in line to fight to possibly even hopefully take back the Senate or take the presidency, even though it's a long shot. She wants to see them gain something, and all they want to do is impeach Donald Trump, even if it doesn't mean he's leaving office. They just want to be able to say they've impeached him, and it's just bad business. So one of the Democratic House members actually told CNN's Jim Acosta that there's growing pressure on Pelosi to launch these impeachment proceedings, that members are growing more restless. Whew, it's getting tough for her. It is so tough for her. But, you know, I don't feel sorry for Nancy. The other thing that's it kind of bears delving into with this is how much time the Democrats are spending talking about impeachment and the president's tax returns and his financial dealings, and how little time they're spending talking about their own policy proposals and what they would do if they took back the Senate, what they would do besides, they have said about gun control. They've said a lot about gun control. They said a lot about single-payer health care. But I'm talking about stuff that actually excites Americans, because polls show Americans don't care about single-payer health care. They don't want it. And they don't want more gun control. They're not interested in large numbers in that. If they were, they would change the composition of the House of Representatives and the Senate. That's how you get that done. So they're not doing that. And I think it's kind of interesting that she's forced to deal with these people instead of working on campaigning, which is what she really wants to be doing. Now, there's this it's a new issuance of a prediction. This professor, he correctly predicted the last 9 presidential elections, and he says that President Trump will win in 2020 unless the Democrats impeach. He says that if the Democrats impeach the president, then he will not win. He's an American University professor. His name is Alan Lichtman. He's a political historian, and he says the Democrats only have a shot at the White House if they begin impeachment proceedings against Trump, calling the decision both constitutionally and politically right in the wake of Special Counsel Mueller's investigation. He says it's a false dichotomy to say that Democrats have a choice between doing what's right and what is constitutional and what is politically right. Impeachment is also politically right. So Lichtman has developed this system of 13 key factors that help determine whether the party in the White House will maintain its hold, according to CNN. The factors actually range from whether the party has an incumbent president, running to the country's short and long-term economic conditions, to foreign policy successes and failures. If the party loses out on 6 factors or more, he says they then lose the presidency. What I find interesting about this is that he starts off with this, that the president has to be impeached. The people of this country, and when I say impeached, meaning that they would have to impeach the president and remove him from office. Barring that, then he wins. They don't have the ability to remove President Trump from office with the Senate as it's currently comprised. So what is he saying? It seems like he's advocating for impeachment, even though he knows that it can't be done. He knows it can't get done, but he's advocating for it anyway. So we have a few minutes left in this segment. Call lines are open if you want to join in. 866-963-2037. 866-963-2037. So I think that's crazy pants. In the world that we're living in for shopping, you guys know when I actually did a huge segment on a show on the weekend version of this program years ago when I heard that we were getting an IKEA here. Well, just like Target, IKEA's going to hoist the rainbow flag at their stores for Pride Month. They're selling a rainbow bag to benefit the homosexual advocacy group. This is so disappointing. Okay, so they're going to partner with the Human Rights Campaign Foundation, and the guy who's making this announcement is Raphael Fantozzi, company diversity and inclusion manager, of course. He says, at IKEA, our culture is centered on the value of togetherness. We believe equality is a fundamental human right and that all homes are created equal. Well, we know that's not true. Let's look at the kids who live in homes where the parents don't care about them. Do you think those kids think their home is equal to a kid whose parents are, really interested in him and take care of him? Or kid who the parents are spending time reading, clothing, feeding, all homes aren't created equal. Come on. Outside of the whole same-sex, LGBTQ, etc. thing. So this rainbow bag is already in sale in the UK and Ireland. The flags were reportedly hoisted on May 17th. And so for their US market, they're actually touting the fact that 2019 is their 25th year since they first ran a homosexual-themed advertisement, which they characterized as groundbreaking. They aired this ad back in 1994, and it was the first national TV spot to ever feature a gay couple, two men shopping together for a dining room table at an IKEA store. I don't even understand what they think is going on here. Every time I'm in the IKEA store here in St. Louis, when I'm in there, it's nothing but women, and sometimes it's the whole family eating dinner after they've shopped. Other times, it's a bunch of moms and babies. It's like mom groups meeting there, and then they shop, and then they eat in the cafeteria. What are they thinking? Their main group of customers is not homosexuals. It's families, traditional families. So they're not alone. In addition to IKEA, Gap launched a Love Always campaign. They're donating 15% of the proceeds to the UN Free and Equal Initiative. Adidas, Reebok, UGG, and Nike have all announced their 2019 rainbow-themed collections. Listerine made their bottles rainbow striped for the month of June. Disney has rolled out an additional rainbow product. Starbucks is selling a Rainbow Love tumbler. The sparkling water brand Bubbly is additionally making available a pride pack with each being a different color to represent the rainbow. So let's just be clear about a couple things. What we've heard over and over again is that people who are homosexuals are born this way. The Bible teaches that all men are born with Adam's sin nature, having various inherent inclinations that are contrary to the law of God and being utterly incapable of changing by ourselves. But Jesus outlined in John 3, verses 5 through 7, that men must be regenerated by the second birth, or they cannot see the kingdom of heaven. Jesus answered and said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born again, he cannot see the kingdom of God. Nicodemus said unto him, How can a man be born when he is old? Can he enter a second time into his mother's womb and be born? And Jesus said, Verily, verily, I say unto thee, except a man be born of water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of God. That which is born of the flesh is flesh, that was born of the Spirit is spirit. Marvel not that I said unto thee, Ye must be born again. The gospel says Jesus saves people from their sins. The Bible says, A new heart also will I give to you, and a new spirit will I put within you, and I will take away the stony heart of your flesh, and I will give you a heart of flesh. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you will keep my judgments and do them. Jesus declared in Mark 1:15, the time is fulfilled, and the kingdom of God is at hand. Repent ye and believe in the gospel. That's for all of us. Let's pray that more people would come to know this truth with us. Don't email me if you're offended about today's show. I'm still ready to light you up via email. I just want to be left alone to do what God has called me to do. God bless you.